Hello, everyone. Welcome into Marc Madness Sports on this Tuesday evening, June 18th, I believe it is today, 2024. Joined today by Sun Prairie native Scott Nelson, who played in his college days at UW-Madison for the Badgers. And you played, Scott, between 1989 and 1994, correct?
Correct.
That time frame that you played from at UW-Madison. And you were a color commentator for 3 years with Wisconsin Public Television type work. And I guess, Scott, how are you this evening? And great to have you join my program.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. Yeah, I've been here, grew up in Sun Prairie, had a chance to play football at the UW, like you mentioned. Not a bad way to go out with the 94 Rose Bowl. That was my last game. And then I dabbled a little bit here and there with various things related to media. I always joke with Jay Wilson, who I had worked with for a number of years, and I joke with him that I came to the dark side, right? Instead of the playing side, I came over to the dark side of media. But really enjoyed it. I was a part of Badger Radio for about 22 years. Did some stuff with Wisconsin Public Television, like you had mentioned, and really enjoyed that work. And then the Big Ten Network came in, so I geared more towards the radio side of things, which I really enjoyed, and did post-game analysis and things for the Badgers, like I said, for 20 plus years. And then watched both my kids go through Sun Prairie as well. My daughter Landry played volleyball and did track and field, and then my son Cooper was basketball, football, and track, and a little bit of baseball as well. So sports family. My wife was from here, so this is where our roots are, and it's great to be here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you, Scott. No, I really appreciate it, and I know I kind of want to get into your UW-Madison days, and I know you were a great player at UW-Madison through your time between 1989 and 1994, and maybe touch more on that Rose Bowl victory in 1994 that you had against UCLA.
Yeah. If I can remember that far back.
Yeah. Right, if you can remember that far back.
Yeah.
In fact, before I was even born.
Yeah, well,
Scott.
Thanks for that. There was a special time, but very thankful. Don Morton was the head coach at the time that I was recruited by, and then had a chance that December when he was let go. That's when they hired Barry, and he came in right after January of the 1989 year, or excuse me, 1990 year. And just progressed. We got better and better as we went. They recruited their tails off, and I was very fortunate to be a part of that senior class for that year. But a lot of great memories from that time, and representing Sun Prairie as well. We had a couple guys on the team when I first got there, and then I was the sole survivor, so to speak. But yeah, we just worked our tails off, and we didn't know any different than what our coaches were telling us. So we bought in. A lot of great guys, people I stay in contact with now, and a true brotherhood, really. But blood, sweat, and tears, and a lot of hard work went into that. But ending that last game out at Pasadena was, I'm sure a lot of people have heard Barry talk about Camp Randall West. It was packed with red and white. UCLA fans were dumping their tickets. They had a lot of really good players. But I don't think they'd faced anybody as physical as us, and we kept getting after them, which was really fun. Because after the game, J.J. Stokes, their top receiver, more or less our defensive back group at the time, just said, "I've never been hit that hard," and that's what we wanted to do, is send a message, and that we obviously came out on the top end of that. But very thankful for that opportunity for sure.
Well, thank you, Scott, for sharing. Yeah, no, that's awesome, and maybe touching more on the position that you played at UW-Madison, because I know you were a safety, so you were in the defensive backfield for defense. What was maybe the coaching staff like with that, and maybe what relationships did you build from kind of playing at
good question, Mark. I ended up having 3 position coaches during my time there. One was under Coach Morton. Paul Jett was my initial coach under Coach Alvarez. Great guy, had played at Texas, had coached a lot of different places. He was part of the staff with Jimmy Johnson, and was at Oklahoma State. Had come around with a lot of different experiences. In my last 2 years, Tom McMahon was my position coach. So it's hard when you go through a transition of staff. Makes it very difficult to really build a relationship, but both those, Coach Jett and Coach McMahon, were great at that. And I played free safety, so I kind of directed the back end of things, was in charge of making checks and different things that we had to based on formation and what we saw through the depth chart and of certain receivers, what we saw through the game planning and what our game plan and approach was to that game. So between myself and one of the middle linebackers, we were kind of directing traffic, so to speak. And that's just playing ball, right? That is just getting after things. And that's the fun part that I really enjoyed. I was making a read, and hopefully it was the right read at the time, and then making a play. But celebrating with your teammates and being a part of that certainly are the memories I have.
Oh, that's awesome. And Scott, in 1993, I know you made it to the Big Ten championship game with the UW Badgers for football. Maybe what was that season like, too? Because that was another special season for your team.
Yeah, we really, at that time, they didn't have the Big Ten championship like they do in Indianapolis. So it was really based on record. We probably had 3 championship games at the tail end of the year. We went back-to-back with Michigan and Ohio State. We tied Ohio State, which was really hard because we outplayed them. And they blocked a field goal at the end of the game. Otherwise, we would have won that one. Then we head on to Illinois. At that time, when we walked into Memorial Stadium down in Champaign, we knew that Ohio State had just beaten Michigan. So our guys were locked in, loaded, ready to go, and really took it to Illinois, who had a really, really good defense. But I think our offense put up 30-some points, close to 400 yards of offense. Just an outstanding game for us. We had a week off. The second week, we played Michigan State over in Tokyo, in Japan. At that time, it was a Coca-Cola Bowl. I don't think they run that game anymore, but it was really cool because that was the only game. It was late at night back here at home, but it was really cool to be a part of that. And I think that was like 42-21 maybe was the final score of that one. But that solidified our bid to the Rose Bowl, and that was a little bit more special because we didn't have all the hoopla back here. They were going crazy on State Street, and we saw pictures and things of that. But we had a really, really solid group that went over there with us that we had a chance to celebrate together, and it was just us. We didn't know anybody. There's nobody bothering us, but we had a chance to go out and we celebrated for sure after that game. But what was really cool for me and a number of my teammates, my folks and my little brother came over to that game as well, and so that's a memory I have for that. And then I remember making the phone call to my older brother who was living in Las Vegas in the Air Force at the time, and I talked to him about 5 seconds, and all I heard was screaming and yelling in the background from the guys he was celebrating with. So even though we were thousands of miles apart, we still got a chance to celebrate together.
That's awesome, Scott. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that Tokyo game more. What was the experience like playing in Tokyo and playing overseas and playing in a different country?
Well, after about it was very much so. I'm 6 foot. My wife and kids would probably argue that point, but I stood out. So it tells you like some of our linemen were 6'5", 6'7", but they did a great job welcoming us into Tokyo, and we all got paired up with different families or business owners or people that we had a chance to go out to eat with, learn a little bit more about the culture. We had a class we had to take before we went over there as part of the UW allowing us to go. A couple different things that stick out to that. Barry was always really good at finding an edge. And so our head athletic trainer, Denny Helwig, talked to some of the people that were part of NASA and space programs and things that were based at the UW, and they said, well, start changing your body clock. We had no idea what that meant. But what they did is instead of like my glasses, we put sunglasses on, and we'd wear them 1 hour longer each day as we adjusted our body clock. We practiced differently, more what we would practice typical time around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We were trying to get on that Tokyo 2 o'clock time. So we jumped on an airplane and we traveled with Michigan State. We traveled with both bands. We traveled with both spirit parties. We traveled with it was a huge plane. But we knew that we couldn't sleep once we got on the plane because we tried to reset ourselves. I think we arrived in Tokyo like at 11 p.m. their time, got stuck in a traffic jam of all things on our way to the hotel. We woke up at 6:30, 7 o'clock the next morning and we're ready to go. First time we went to the practice field, Mark, it was basically an outfield of a baseball stadium. They had Velcroed lines for every 5 yards.
Oh, wow.
And so we had a couple guys that got tripped up during practice, and Barry was not happy about, we ended up ripping those lines off and just playing in space. But great experience. Obviously, the fans didn't really know what was going on, but a lot of people in Japan traveled to Hawaii or to California, and so they kind of knew the mystique of the Rose Bowl, and they were really into that part of it. And then, of course, when we won, that goes over the PA system, and that we're going to be representing the Big Ten Conference there, and just some really cool things that we had a chance to experience just simply because we played football, and that's the game that we know and love, and those opportunities come with part of that, but it comes with some responsibility too to be smart about things and handle yourself appropriately, and I won't say that we always did, but it was pretty cool to be a part of that for sure.
No, that's awesome, Scott. And I want to get back to talking about the 1994 Rose Bowl, and then I'll end with a few fun questions. But,
Okay.
But with the Rose Bowl, I know after the game you had an engagement moment with your wife and got married. And what was that? What was that like? Having that?
Yeah. Well, for me, we got to California, and I had the engagement ring, and I gave it to a priest that had traveled with us all the time. I said, I don't want to think about this. I told him what I was going to do, and I said, just make sure you take care of this thing for me. I had no idea after the game how I was going to get the ring back. We didn't even talk about that, so he was on top of that. But the story typically goes, there was a police officer that traveled with us from the UW Police Department. He went up in the stands and had a pass for Becky to get down on the field. I had gotten blocked low earlier in the game, and so she thought something happened with my knee and I was hurt and they needed her down there, whatever the case. But I just got interviewed, and then I see her as I turn around from the reporter. I'm like, oh man, forgot about this, because the euphoria of the game, right? And as I give her a hug, the priest, Father Mike Burke, puts the box into my hand. And then it became real. So I just said, I got a question to ask you, dropped down on the knee. And it was pretty funny to see her reaction. Her jaw just dropped open. And the only people that really knew, my dad knew that I had the ring. I had a diamond set from my grandmother, from his mother. So a little family tradition and history with all that. But the only people that really knew when I was going to do it were her sister and brother-in-law.
Wow.
So word spread pretty quick after that happened. But it was one of those surreal. We just won the Rose Bowl, biggest game of your career, and my last game, and all those things that go into it was all one section, and then the next section of our engagement, and we'll celebrate 29 years here in about a month. So pretty awesome.
Well, congratulations on that moment, and I'm sure that was just a beautiful moment and really cool.
Yeah, it was well worth the pain and agony of
all
the other stuff that goes into it, without a doubt.
I'm sure it was. And Scott, I'll end with this question. We'll finish up the fun question segment the next time, more of the questions. But what is your favorite sports movie? We're going to end with that today.
Oh, my favorite sports movie. I got a couple of them, I guess. One, Happy Gilmore's always one to me that's kind of fun, right? I can't golf very well. I try, but I can't hit like he does. But that's always kind of a fun one. I think the other one that another golf movie is The Greatest Game Ever Played. I think that's just a really cool thing, set way back in the early 1900s, and just watching the euphoria of kind of the first U.S. Open really to take place, and what happened through that. It's just a really cool storyline, and something that's kind of a fun one just to repeat and watch.
I got a couple here, Scott, for myself.
Okay.
Moneyball, I really
like that. That's
a great
one too. Yep,
that's
I like
a really
that.
good one. And Remember the Titans was the other one.
Yeah,
I think those are my two favorite.
Remember the Titans. I really like the storyline with that too. Right?
Right.
I probably have like 10 I could list off.
Right.
But I would totally agree with both those. Are tremendous movies. Moneyball is one that gets you thinking a little bit differently about baseball, for sure. For sure. Well, I'm Marc Carstens, the host of Marc Madness Sports, joined today by former Badger, Wisconsin football player, safety, Scott Nelson. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure to watch Scott's favorite sports movie next time you pull out a DVD player. When you're bored.
When you're bored, don't pull out a DVD player. Well, take care, everybody, and we'll have another segment here next time, finishing up our conversation that I'm having with Scott Nelson today. So thanks you so much for listening in to Marc Madness Sports. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody. Goodbye. All right, hello, everyone. Welcome into Marc Madness Sports. Today is Thursday, actually. Yep, Thursday. I'm excited to have Scott Nelson. We're finishing up part 2 of our conversation here. Scott Nelson, a Sun Prairie native, former UW Badgers football player. Also played for the Cardinals in Sun Prairie, so Sun Prairie Cardinal back in high school days. Worked at the Badgers Football Network. Did some color commentating work. Did some public address announcing. Has done a lot of things in sports. So we're going to continue kind of our conversation here about sports. And Scott, I want to go back to talking a little bit more about your UW-Madison football playing days back in the late 1980s and then early 1990s, from 89 to 1994. And maybe just kind of your favorite moment throughout your college career. Was it maybe that Rose Bowl in 1994?
Well, it's hard to beat that, right?
Right.
For sure. That was probably the most enjoyable game, just because of what was riding on it. We worked so hard to get there. Another one would come into mind would be the first start that I had was down against Iowa in 1990. Barry and about 2 or 3 of the guys on his staff here at the UW were from Iowa. And so it was a big game for them. And that's had a chance to start in that game. First time ever, had some great guys around me. Troy Vincent, who's one of the executives in the NFL now, Eddie Fletcher, and then Greg Thomas was our strong safety. It's also the game I got my very first college interception, which was pretty cool. They had a running back by the name of Nick Bell, who was about 6'3" or 6'4" and about 240 pounds. And I ended up with 23 tackles on the day. About 20 of them were against him, and I could not stand up the next day. So a little bit wild that way. And on one of the hits where I hit him, I wore contacts during the game, and the contact popped out. So I played half the game with one contact in.
Oh, wow.
So it was interesting to say the least. But that would probably be my, I guess, one of the things that pops out is just getting your first college start.
No, that's awesome. And that's pretty wild.
Yeah,
Scott,
it
you
was.
playing with only one contact, and if you're wearing glasses and you lose a contact, or if you have any vision,
you can appreciate
with one
that,
contact, you appreciate being able to finish out that game and play as well as you could.
Yeah.
You did. So congrats on that game and
thanks.
23 tackles and fantastic. So maybe about UCLA more. What maybe made that UCLA team so tough to go against? And I think your team was fortunate enough to come out victorious on that day.
They had a lot of really good guys. I think there was 2 receivers they had that played in the NFL. Jonathan Ogden was one of their offensive linemen. He played in the NFL. They had a number of guys that had NFL talent, and we weren't really that well known yet as far as our players. My senior class, I think 2 or 3 guys had tryouts. Joe Panos, our starting right tackle, was in the NFL for probably 6 or 7 years. But they had a lot of really good talent. We knew we did too. Nobody knew about us yet. We kind of all of a sudden flashed on the screen after a couple years of being 5 and 6. So overall, we were still fighting for recognition, not so much personally, but for our program and for the university. So we knew we had a tough test ahead of us, and really good receiving core all around, even running backs that got involved, or tight ends. So we knew that they were going to get a lot of catches. But our job was to make sure they didn't get yards after the catch. And so we had a scheme defensively that I think our guys really took to. We had a front 7 with linebackers and D linemen that really did a great job up front for us to allow us to read where we had to. And they had a number of sacks. I think overall in the game we might have had 6 fumble recoveries against them. So we were playing really physical football, and I don't think they expected that. So from a defensive standpoint, which on the side of the ball I was on, great game plan by the coaches, and we executed it very well. And then offensively, our guys took care of business. And we're able to do some really good things. That's obviously, people probably remember the infamous Darrell Bevel run for 20 or 30 yards, and all of us were in shock with that, I think, when he scored. But we needed that. And then defensively, they ran out of timeouts. We just knew we had to keep them in bounds and on the field and prevent the score. And so very much complimentary football all the way around.
Well, that's awesome, Scott. And Darrell Bevel, wasn't he the Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator for a little while?
Yeah, he was. He was, I think, with the Detroit Lions as their offensive coordinator for a while. He was in Jacksonville, and now I believe he's the quarterback's coach for the Dolphins.
Wow.
So yeah, he's had a pretty good run.
Yeah, he's had a pretty good coaching run now in
Yeah.
the NFL. So congrats to him for that too.
Yeah.
Beyond his playing days, but Scott, maybe speaking of coaching, I know you've done some coaching yourself with Sun Prairie Cardinals football here in Sun Prairie, and done some coaching. And what has it been like maybe for you? I know being also a player, being a coach, like kind of what are some of the differences? And you've also been a broadcaster, so you've kind of gotten to see all different sides of sports. What maybe has that been like, seeing all these different angles of sports?
So I help out with Cardinal football, more on the JV level, and then Sun Prairie track and field as well, Cardinal track and field. Other than these last 2 years, we were always together, right? And so I think the split's been pretty good for our program on the east side. We've had the tradition all the way around, and I really enjoy coaching just because I get to, I guess, give a little tidbits here and there to the kids that they're trying to learn some things and techniques. I had the chance to coach both my son and daughter in track and field, my son in football. And Cooper went to play. He walked on at the University of Wisconsin to begin with and then transferred to Winona State. We had a nice 2-year playing career up there for him and graduated this last December. My daughter decided she'd go out and go someplace warm, so she's down at Florida Gulf Coast University, and Landry's home with us now for the summer, which is great. But she's not competing in college, but really enjoyed her volleyball experience. Both of them played for coaches and ran for Doug Mon, our head track coach. Obviously, Coach Kaminsky is still here with football, and then TJ Rantala is who my daughter played for volleyball. She went to state 3 years in a row with them. Great job on TJ's part in keeping that group together. And then the football run, Cooper had a chance to experience, I think it was the 2018 state game against Kimberly, that was their 70th win, like in a row, longest streak in the nation. And we had chances. The kids just came up a little bit short. But battled to get there, right? Really hard to get there.
Oh, yeah, very hard.
And then track and field, I've coached both those probably around 10 years now here we've been back. And football's always been really good. This year might be a little bit, we have to find some different pieces to plug in. Quarterback is one, running back is another, right? Brady Kaufman is returning, but we lost Cortez LeGrand a couple years ago. So we have some positions, I think, that could be really good from the football side of things, and some that are unknown, which is typically what happens in high school, right? Kids graduate and you coach and you train, and but we've got kids that like to play, right? And that's really what you look for. And if they come with a passion for the game, makes it a lot easier, and there's a little bit more buy-in to that. We just came off a few weeks ago from the state track and field meet. I think we took up about 27 or 28 kids in multiple events and field events and relays, running events. Shayla Ellert, who's a junior, finished 6th, I believe, overall in the girls' Division I 800-meter run. Alexa Warrenson placed in pole vault. Audrey Seefeld was there for a couple different things, and unfortunately didn't get on the podium, but a tremendous senior for us, a lot of leadership from that standpoint. And then Anna Wozczek, who's a freshman, surprised the heck out of me. She was one of my hurdlers. That's the event that I coach, is the 100 and 110 hurdles and then the 300 hurdles. She qualified for the finals as a freshman in the girls' D1 300 hurdles. So I finished 8th overall, or 9th overall, I believe it was. But we just have a few kids here and there that you plug in, right? And they're excited about it, they work at it. And that's always what we've been blessed with as far as our athletes go for the Cardinals. I don't know as much about all the kids over for Sun Prairie West, other than the few that graduated this year. Ian Ackley, who's going up to Minnesota Duluth to play football, I go back even when I coached Cooper and then Ian's older brother, Ethan, in 8th grade football. He was my little assistant coach. Now here he is about 6'2" and about 220 pounds, and he's going to play college football. So that's the fun part, I guess, as a coach, when you see your kids move on to the next level, if they want to go have some success and appreciate the hard work that they put in, right? And it got them somewhere. And that's what's pretty cool. When you look back and you watch those kids progress now in college, you had a little piece of that.
I was fortunate enough to have Ian Ackley on this program, Marc Madness Sports, not too long ago. So,
yeah, really good kid, good
really
family.
Great kid.
I'm excited to see what he does up at Duluth.
Yeah, I am too. I think he's going to do great things up at Duluth, because he's a great kid and he's a great athlete and special football player. I mean, he really is.
That's one thing about Sun Prairie athletics. We've had a number of kids when they got out of school, either like Andy Thompson, a lot of people know, went and played in minor league baseball for a while, made it into the majors for a short period. But Feiner brothers, Corey and Kevin, had a chance to go play in the minor leagues. A lot of people have had success, right? And I think there's 2 or 3 guys from Sun Prairie East, Drew Kavanaugh, I believe Luke Dam and Curtis Johnson are going to play football at UW-Eau Claire. A couple other guys, right? That Cortez, I think you had on the show a while ago. He's up in Minnesota. Jerry Kaminsky's at North Dakota. Caden White and Caden Kalpanen were 2 guys that played at North Dakota that were from Sun Prairie. So people have started to take notice of what Sun Prairie has. And I think that's attributed, one, to the work ethic of the kids, taking care of things in the classroom. Obviously, the coaching staffs that we have do a good job in getting them prepped and ready. If they choose to and want to play in college, there's an opportunity for them.
And I'm meaning to get Drew Kavanaugh on this program for Marc Madness Sports, because I really want Drew on this program.
Yeah. Well, he just finished up the state baseball runner-up, so he's been a little busy.
Yeah, he's been pretty busy. He even told me that. He said, "Mark, we'll wait till
at some point.
We'll wait till I'm a little less busy." But totally understand. But maybe get more into your son Cooper. I want to touch more on Cooper. So Cooper obviously did really well as a Cardinal back in high school, his days there, and did really well in college too. And I think your son is at points had aspirations of even going on to play professional ball.
Yeah, when I talked to them about that, Mark, again, he walked onto the UW, and it was interesting. Recruiting's changed a lot from the time that I did it 35 years ago, believe it or not. So that from that standpoint, it was a little bit unique for my wife and I, and for him. But he had decided to walk onto the UW and experience that. He got to see jump around from the field and all the training and things that go in, and met some really good guys from all over the country, which I told him right away. I said, that's going to be the thing you're going to remember is the games will come and go, but overall, the relationships you have. COVID came around, he tore a muscle in his quad, and then 6 months later decided to transfer because he wanted to play. And that's a hard place to play, right? They bring in some really good talent. Even on down years, there's still really good talent there. So we went up to Winona State, and we traveled to Augustana in Sioux Falls and looked at a number of different places, and he decided on Winona and played for 2 years up there. And his first year, they went to the Division II playoffs, which was really fun. The bad part was the first game was up in Bemidji, about the end of November, freezing cold. I would not want to go up there again, but it was really fun to watch him experience that, and I think he's really happy with how things turned out. You always want a little bit more. I asked him when he was transferring, I said, do you have aspirations to play on, whether it be a Canadian Football League or if Arena Football League is still around or anything that way? And I don't know that he did as he got into it. He saw the time and energy and effort that had to go into that. And I think he just enjoyed playing again, because it had been almost 3 years from his high school days where he actually played other than practice. So getting a chance to get back on the field and again, meeting a whole new set of guys from around Wisconsin, around Minnesota, and again, relationships. And so he went back in the spring to see a couple of his friends that were still in spring football already, and has been able to keep in touch with those guys. And 20 years from now, that's what he's going to remember. So we're happy for him. We're proud of him. Both our kids, even our daughter going down to Florida for school, right? That's a big change from what you know in the comfort of home. And she's starting to thrive, which makes Mom and I a little bit happier to see. So we're lucky to have them both back right now, and trying to enjoy that family time as much as we can.
Well, congrats to Cooper and congrats to your daughter.
Yeah, thanks.
And maybe more about your daughter too, because it sounds like she did really well in volleyball back in high school. And did she end up doing that in college as well, volleyball? Or?
Nope, she decided not to do that. I think she'll do some intramural things and stays busy, but she's involved in a lot of different stuff. She's looking to get into like hospitality and event management, which is Florida's a great place to do that. She got a chance to work at Topgolf when she was down there. She's now working up at Pin Seekers here over in Windsor, and really starting to enjoy some of those things. But she's always been a little bit more outgoing than Cooper, so it fits her much better that way. Cooper's a little bit more reserved, likes to survey things, understand and feel what's going on. She'll just jump right in, and it's interesting. Two kids from the same people, but very different. But it's been fun to watch them grow up, and my wife and I are very lucky.
And Pin Seekers, that's a good place. I like those two punting courses they have, and the driving range. And
yeah,
I'm gonna have to try the driving range. I've only tried the putting courses. So
yeah, the driving range is interesting to me. I've been out there one time, and you're on different levels, so I don't know if I really get a true gauge on how well I'm hitting. But they got a lot of different games. It's really fun to be out there, and we got some good food, and she's been busy with events out there, which is good to see that, because that's pretty much brand new, right, for all of us here. And I think she's really enjoyed her time there. She's exhausted when she comes home, but it's certainly well worth her time.
No, that's awesome. And Scott, I want to talk more about your color commentating days with TV for Badger football, and kind of just more the broadcasting side of things now. Maybe share a little bit about your color commentating. You did it 3 years on TV for Wisconsin Public Television. Maybe share a little bit what that experience was like, and how much you enjoyed that. And
yeah, Mike Heller, who a lot of people know from the radio on 1070 here in Madison, did that together, and they were looking for some people to fill in, and Mike and I knew each other from his time covering it. He was at Channel 15 for a while, and then came back to Wisconsin, and so we got together and formed a team for Wisconsin Public Television. Loved doing that. It was a transition between Barry getting out and Brett Bielema coming in. So it was certainly exciting times with all that stuff going on, right? And then the Big Ten Network came into play, which means Wisconsin Public Television couldn't broadcast the games anymore. So we tried to get in the Big Ten Network, but when you think about when they first started, they probably broadcast 2 or 3 games, which means they need 6 people.
Right.
So it's really hard to get into that racket. So from that, I decided to pursue the radio side of things. I knew a couple people again from there, just from my playing days. Matt LePay and Mike Lucas were the 2 main guys doing that. So I had a chance to talk with them a little bit and express interest in that. And then that led to basically from pregame to some halftime analysis to postgame analysis. And then I did that for like 22 years, I believe it was. Until the time Cooper got back into playing at Winona, and then I stopped. But really like that. The hardest part is you're trying to watch and enjoy the game while you're trying to think and analyze certain plays, and was that the right call? Should we have called in timeout here, right? All those different things that go into your people's heads. And people would ask me a lot, Mark, like, why did they do this? I don't know why, right? Because they thought the play was going to work. And you really have a 50-50 shot. And sometimes it's just a stalemate. You called a good play, they called a good defense, and it doesn't work.
Right, exactly.
So I try not to overthink and overanalyze stuff too much, because it's just a game.
Right, right.
But people are passionate about it. And so, learning to manage and handle calls from listeners in our post-game show that we had was unique. And you become a psychologist at times. Sometimes you argue with people. Sometimes you just flat out disagree. Or sometimes, hey, that's a great point. I didn't think of that. I wish I had an answer for you, but I don't. I'm not in the coaches' meetings. And so you try and you temper things a little bit without really singling out any player. Same thing in high school games. I've called high school state championship games before. And you don't want to call it a single player. It's more about the team and the aspect of things. And coach is a little bit more free reign in college, for sure, right? But again, try to stay away from singling out a specific player as much as possible, because I know the work they're putting in.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like they're trying to miss a tackle or drop a football or fumble or throw an interception or whatever. They're out there competing their tails off, and that's, I guess, the little different viewpoint that I've tried to bring to the table, and just help guide people through and off the ledge. To just understand, hey, they're working their tails off, and they'll get it right. Like they watch film and they understand what mistakes they made, and coaches will make sure they get it corrected.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I've gotten to experience my own broadcasting through doing softball games for Sun Prairie West, some even football games, and some baseball games this year for Sun Prairie West. I did quite a few. With Steve Sabaki and I, we did quite a few games together. So even with that, with the media center, I know what goes into it.
Yeah. There's a lot of work behind the scenes, a lot of prep work that we put in, whether you're a play-by-play or an analyst. A lot of work by the crews behind, right, making sure whether it's cameras like we have here, it's all the sound checks, the running cable, especially when you go to an away game. It's all different than what you're used to at home. So there's a lot that goes into that, and I learned to appreciate that work a little bit more. And trying to help run cable and do things just so we can get it set up and get things tested. So when your product, right, is on the field and you're talking about it, that things are ready to go for fans to enjoy. And as a player, you get spoiled. You don't have to do a lot of that stuff. You see the work that goes into not just playing a game, but also broadcasting a game, and from the TV side of it, and watching ABC or NBC crews come in, and ESPN crews, and then the hoopla of game day that we've had at Madison a number of times. And even what you guys do, right? Broadcasting Sun Prairie games. There's a lot that goes into that. And you need good producers, and you just need people, right? That care and are willing to do the work. And when you have that, I think that comes across in what you put over the airwaves.
Absolutely. Completely agree, Scott. Yeah. And no, I mean, it's cool that we've both gotten to experience this broadcasting side of it and gotten to see it. And I've played sports too in high school. I played baseball, and I've played basketball. I still play for fun basketball these days. I love doing
I wish
it.
I could. My knees don't quite enjoy that as much anymore, but it happens.
Yes, no, for sure. And maybe, Scott, I want to ask you more about the Badgers kind of radio side of things, and maybe with Matt LePay specifically, because Matt LePay is a really great broadcaster and a pretty unique guy who also does work for the Milwaukee Brewers on top of what he does with the Badgers.
Yeah, I think Matt's slowly stepped away from the Brewer work because summertime is his downtime. Otherwise, he's doing men's basketball and sometimes overlaps with football. Probably one of the better talents that I've ever come across. So we're very lucky to have kept him. Gary Delphin is the play-by-play guy for Iowa football. Another really good guy that's been around a long time. The only thing I joke around with Matt is, you're from Ohio, right? But I think he's overcome that by now. But between him and Lucas and now Marc Tauscher in the booth, really good people, right, that have a passion for what they're doing, and that's why Matt's so good. It comes across. He paints a picture of a football play that most people can't, because you can see it in your mind when you hear him talk, right? You can picture that in your mind, and those guys were really good. For me, Mike and I had a halftime segment that we did for about 8-10 minutes each Saturday for Badger football, and it just felt like guys talking sports, right? He would ask a question, and then I would say a couple things, and then he'd come back to something I said. It was just guys sitting around like on your couch at home, just talking football, and that was the fun part for me. Is like it wasn't forced, and I think when people can feel that and sense that, that's a really good show that you put together for them. Jim Yeager, who was a longtime announcer for Sun Prairie Cardinals, just when we were one high school. Passed away a number of years ago, and Eric Nee was the athletic director over at Sun Prairie at that time, and I just said, hey, if you need somebody to help out with the PA stuff, I'd be happy to try and do that. And this is probably about 10 years later, and he's still asking me to come back. And now Jim Rotella, who's at Sun Prairie East, Jim said, hey, do you want to do it again? And then that got into football, PA announcing, and I'm probably going to go to the games anyways. I might as well do something and get a little bit of money for it and enjoy it that way too. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're still able to do PA announcing for Sun Prairie games?
Yeah. I always joke with my wife now, like I got to find something where I get out of the house for her so she can keep her sanity. Yeah, I like doing that. And having coached some of those kids that I get to announce, right, whether I see them in basketball or football, you look at it and you can understand certain things that are about to happen, and so when you speak about it, right, it becomes a little bit easier because you understand what's going on. And from that standpoint, I've been very lucky. Jeff Booz, who was a head basketball coach when I first started doing the PA announcing, they had a great run of a number of really good teams. Two of them got to the state championship level, or state tournament, I guess. The first two times that Sun Prairie's ever gone. And it took this long. We've been close a number of times, but finally got there, and it was 2018, 2019. The girls have been there, I think, one time, and so it tells you how hard, even with the talent that we had, how hard it is really to make to that championship level. So I hope kids appreciate that, right, when they do get there, and parents do, and the community does for sure. Sun Prairie is a strong athletic community, and they support the sound of Sun Prairie and a lot of different venues, right, that we have. But I think the kids, and I think they understand, but I hope they appreciate when you have an opportunity to do that, of what that really means, and the blood, sweat, and tears that your mom and dad when you were little, driving you to different things, when they get to high school, the support that they offer, and then hopefully the commitment of the school district as well as the community, right, that they can look at that full picture as they gain a little bit more, I'll call it experience, basically them getting older, right, that they understand what was before them, and that they were able to take advantage of that.
Well, no, thanks, Scott, for sharing. And I actually want to ask you about Marc Tauscher a little bit, because he's also a Sun Prairie native man. He's from Sun Prairie. So Marc Tauscher, and he lives here, I believe, here in Sun Prairie.
Marc was originally, I think, from Auburndale, which is up toward Marshfield, I believe, but has been in the community now a number of years. And so I think he calls us home. But obviously a great career for him, certainly in the pros. His college career was a little on and off, right? But had one solid year, got drafted, and almost within 3 or 4 games of the season for the Packers became a starter. Really good guy, understands things. I think he keeps it pretty light. because he understands the intensity, certainly at a high level to where a lot of us hope to someday get to, right? But Marc's really good, and he does a radio show in the morning, and it gives him a chance to talk about a lot of sports. And I hear their show and they banter back and forth, but they're having fun, right?
Right.
And so again, it's about communication, and it's not forced. They just talk to each other, but it makes for good radio. And Marc brings experiences that a lot of us never will have. His kids are growing up now. I saw him out the other day up at Summit Field at Sun Prairie East playing baseball and doing things, and he's involved in coaching. And I think that's part of what has helped make Sun Prairie, athletically at least, parents get involved, and there's a lot of experience from moms and dads that coach their kids when they're younger. And I think the hardest part is letting go when they come to high school and letting the high school coaches handle that. Like that gets to be difficult. But I think parents also see the people that we have there, and some of the abilities that they bring to the table, the experiences they have, and they know their kids are in good hands.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, look at a lot of the coaches we have right here now, specifically for football here in Sun Prairie. You have Josh O'Connor, who's a fantastic, really good mental, football guy. And then you also have Brian Kaminsky, who's kind of that old school, coach that's been coaching for a long time and had a lot of success. So.
Yeah, and Josh is still building the program, right? It's just year 2, and Brian's been lucky. His staff has been around, I think Brian's been the head coach for 20-some years now. And most of his staff is the same people, even all the way down. We've had some turnover at the lower levels, but some young coaches start having families and they want to dedicate their time, which we totally understand. But we have Cormac Sampson, who's a former offensive lineman from the UW, from Eau Claire originally. He's helping out Mike Pogue, who's been a longtime coach. A lot of good people that way, and we'll have graduates from Sun Prairie that'll come back and want to at least help out when they can. They'll get their jobs when they graduate from school, right? But I think they ultimately want to come back and help and give back a little bit, and that's a good thing for them, and good things for our kids, because those that have played on bring that experience and maybe a little different technique or a different drill, and it changes some things. But the kids are learning as they go, right? They're learning new things and new techniques, and that's in most of the sports. That Sun Prairie offers, right? That's really good that way, and it's fun to watch them grow and develop, and it's fun. It makes me feel old, but it's fun to see those young guys when I was coaching them either in 8th grade or in high school now, and they come back and they want to get back a little bit, but they've become men as far as the football. They look much different than when they left us, and then hats off to them for the hard work they put in.
No, awesome, Scott. Well, I mean, with Mark Tauscher and Matt LePay, I need to get them on this Marc Madness Sports program. Those would be 2 fantastic guests.
You might have a better chance of getting Tauscher here than you would LePay. He's a busy guy.
LePay's a pretty busy guy, but maybe Tauscher.
Yeah.
I'd love to get Tauscher in here. He's great, and I've heard he's doing really good work over at ESPN Madison. And
yeah, he's just a good guy. And he's got a couple buddies here, Vince Brandel, who I worked with over at Patrick Marsh Middle School, and then Craig Brandel, who are brothers. They all went to Auburndale together, so it's kind of neat to see those guys hang out a little bit and relive memories. But yeah, really good guy. If you can get him on here, I'm sure he'd be enjoyable to talk to.
Oh yes, he would be fantastic. Yeah. I'd love to have him on here, but maybe before we get into our fun question segment, I want to ask you a little bit more about Sun Prairie East football and track and field, and maybe let's talk a little bit about Sun Prairie East football, and kind of, since that's only like 6 weeks away, Scott.
Yeah,
it's the start of the season. I can't believe that's coming. Maybe just previewing this football season a little bit. Well, Brian Kaminsky's still the head coach there. I'm assuming, Scott, I'm going to ask you this. Would you suspect that Max Raymer would be the starting quarterback and stuff right now for the East? I mean, that would be my guess.
I guess when you look at things, as things have passed down, right, we've had J.P. Kern and Ryan Kern, brothers that played, and then Kevin Florick, or Nathan Florick, excuse me, Kevin's his dad, played quarterback, and then Jack Zander, who helped lead the team to state, and then the year after him was Richie Gillis, and then I think we had Brady Stevens, and then you had Jerry Kaminsky, and then last year, it's interesting as you transition, right, that from Jerry Kaminsky, who was a 3-year starter,
right,
to Drew Kavanaugh last year, very different skill set. But each guy brought something to the table, and they developed well, but they understood what was expected of them. So Max, if you look at pecking order, probably is would be leading, but there's guys that push them. And that's the other thing that we've been lucky with is we've had competition, right? And you need that at the various positions until you solidify yourself as the guy. So like I said before, there's probably a handful of spots that are open that people are going to need to compete for, and there's some that maybe there's already a 2-year starting in the offensive line or a defensive line or whatever the case. That you probably have a little better idea on who's going to be playing there. But until we get into there and see who's worked over the summer and who's come ready to go, but typically from freshman to senior year, guys that survive that long and want to put in that time, it's really interesting to see that growth and progression. But I would guess Max would have a leg up on everybody else, but until we see what happens, right?
Right.
We don't. It'd be hard for me to say, yeah, he's it.
Right. Right.
But I think that's the fun part too, is having competition at each position and moving some guys around maybe to a new position that creates some of that competition as well. That if you're a starting receiver and somebody slides in behind you, now you better work. And
Right.
if you think you're working before, you better work harder, right? And understanding that progress.
And Cooper White, I think, is going to be a really key player on this Sun Prairie East team as a receiver.
Yeah, I think Cooper probably brings the best skill set, I guess, for the skill positions, running back and receivers, to the table. He came out for the track team this year, did very well in his first year doing that. Really good kid that I never had a chance to coach because he jumped over from freshman up to varsity right away. But I think an opportunity lies ahead of him if he chooses to play past high school as well. So there's a handful of guys. I won't throw a lot of names out there just
Right.
because we don't know what it's going to be.
Right.
But I think there's some challenges ahead of us, but there's also some great opportunity, right?
Right.
And so we had a really strong offensive line these last number of years. That's probably going to be a spot where there's going to be people fighting for spots, which creates a better offensive line ultimately when guys have to work at that. So we'll see how that fits together. But I know the coaches at the varsity level, they come down to our JV games. Freshmen play right before us. We're always watching their freshmen, varsity, or so we have an understanding of what's coming. And the guys that are where we think we can play them or what position they're in. And then we'll have a few contact days over the summer and really get a chance to see their footwork and watch their progression as they go through different reads and things and talk to them and coach them up a little bit so that their minds start thinking about 2 or 3 things before they get into fall camp, which, like you said, is 6 weeks away.
It's crazy.
It's coming fast, yeah.
And Alton Williams was a really good offensive lineman for the Cardinals last year, and he was a senior. Who do you think would replace him on the offensive line? He's going to be a tough one to replace.
Yeah, I don't know that you do replace the guy that's 6'8" and 300 pounds, right?
Right.
That just doesn't happen. Gross, Logan Gross is another one. He's going, I believe he's walking on at Northern Illinois. So 2 good tackles, really good tackles. I don't know the answer to your question. I wish I did, but those are certainly 2 spots of guys that have played for 3 years at the varsity level. They have done a really good job that are going to be really hard to replace.
Yeah, Logan Gross and
yeah,
Alton
that's going to be
Williams.
tough.
That's a tough duo to replace, but we'll see what happens, right,
Yeah,
Scott?
hopefully we can find somebody.
But Scott, maybe I'll finish with talking about Cardinals track and field a little bit here and what they did at state. Maybe mention, I know you kind of mentioned Stella did really well at state, and Anna, who was just a freshman, did really well at state. And maybe talk about Connor Stoff too, because he made it to state and a football player.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that you just mentioned there. We have a number of kids that are multi-sport athletes. Shayla ran cross country. She was a soccer player before she came out to track. Anna does volleyball and track and field. Connor did football and track and field. Audrey Seefeld did, I believe she went up for cross country and gymnastics, and then track and field. Alexa Warrenson is another gal that I worked with that did cross country and track. And so we have multi-sport athletes. And Coach Mon, our head track coach, Coach Kaminsky from football comes and helps assist like with weight room things for us and is part of our track staff. So we have a lot of people that cross over. So we get a chance to see the kids compete in a little bit different way. And I think that's important when you're trying to build a program and have just athletes that you can plug in many different positions, is they need to play multiple sports. And so we really try to push that as much as we can. If you're not doing something, find something to do, right? And
Right.
whether that means come out for a sport, or if you're training at the Prairie Athletic Club, whatever it is, you need to be doing something. And if you don't have the passion or desire to, that's okay. But understand, as people again progress from your freshman year all the way up through your senior year, other people are doing that.
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't have to be 365, right? Kids need a break too, just like we need a break, right?
Yeah,
from,
exactly.
From our coaching time. But I think that's important that they understand you can take a little break here and there, but you need to keep doing something, because the skill set does diminish if you don't. And most of our kids understand that. So having those multi-sport athletes like those kids we mentioned, I think is really important.
Yeah, maybe touch more on Audrey Seefeld, because I was fortunate enough to have her on this program, Marc Madness Sports, last year. And Audrey's just a great athlete. I mean,
Yeah.
she's a fantastic athlete. She can do so many things well.
Yeah, and she wants to do well. Like
Yeah.
we had some great banter back and forth. Her freshman year, she didn't talk nearly as much. Her senior year, she kind of gave me the look, like, really, but you build a relationship, and again, that's a lot of what coaching is about, and understanding your athletes. But she would always ask different things. I would try to correct just one or two things each day, where it doesn't overload, right? Audrey's biggest trouble is because she was always active, there's always some nagging thing, whether it be an ankle or whatever the case. But she overcame that. And in the 100 hurdles at sectionals in the finals, she missed going to state by like 0.2 seconds. Like, you're talking a snap of a finger, right? But she ran her best race of the year. So she can feel good about leaving everything on the track. And she made it through in pole vault, had a vault off actually between Ella Grace Olson and Audrey, who Ella Grace is from Sun Prairie as well. So two of our girls were competing to go to state against each other. Great, but really hard. But Audrey was always willing to ask questions, always willing to listen to constructive criticism, took coaching well. Her dad's a track coach over at Waterloo High School. So I think she understands the coaching side of it. What I'm excited about for her is she's going to UW-Madison, so another Badger, which is good.
Badger, congrats.
And she is, at least right now, looking at becoming a physician's assistant. So, like, she's got some things that are going to be really, really good out in front of her. But that's all due to her hard work in school, and she had a number of AP classes she took. So you look at a full, complete picture. If we could bottle her up and put them into like 30, 40, 50 other kids, it'd be great. But certainly going to miss her. Had a chance to spend time with her these last 4 years, but during my 10 years coaching there, certainly one that I'll remember.
Well, congrats to Audrey Seefeld, who's a great athlete and someone who's been on Marc Madness Sports. So 3-sport athlete too. That's just impressive. And to be good at school and still succeeding in academics, that's not an easy thing, Scott. When you're doing 3 sports and then trying to succeed in school, that's not easy. And she was able to do that.
Yeah, and not many kids. There's not many 3-sport athletes anymore in high school if you look across the state. So that's a special one, right? That is willing to put that time in to do that.
Well, I had one athlete not too long ago that was a 4-sport athlete in here, Scott. Brady Rhodes, 4-sport athlete with him, Scott.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew that about Brady.
No. What's his 4th sport that he did?
Yeah, so track and field, baseball, basketball, and then football.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Yeah, not many people can pull that off.
Yeah,
right?
not many people can pull that off, for sure. And he's now Brady. He's going to be playing at UNC Charlotte.
Yeah.
In the fall. I don't know if you knew about that.
Yeah, Brady was one kid that I remember him back when he was a freshman, and then a sophomore, and then their split happened. You talk about progression. The kid's really grown. He's filled out, right? But he's worked at it. And again, when you see some kids that you have had at least a piece of what they've accomplished, you've been a part of that. When they go on to that next level, you try and follow those kids, right, to see how they're doing. And today's world of transferring and all that kind of stuff has changed quite a bit of that. But not many kids, like I said, my daughter went to Florida. We've had a number of kids. One went to Clemson. One went like all over the place, right? But they're experiencing things, and you just hope that the choice they made and the decision where they're going, right, is going to work out for them, because you want to see those kids have some success.
Oh, absolutely, Scott. And I mean, just think about all the quarterbacks we've had in Sun Prairie. It's just crazy. Brady Stevens, Jerry Kaminsky, Drew Kavanaugh, maybe now Max Raymer, Brady Rhodes. I mean, just all these names of quarterbacks, just a lot of really talented, pretty special athletes.
Yeah, and if you look back at the history of all that, I know we talked about Mike Powers a little bit.
Yeah.
when you go way back into the 70s, some really good football players. 80s, we had a number of really good quarterbacks, really good athletes as well. But again, Sun Prairie you did multiple sports. You did football and wrestling, or football and basketball, and then guys would split up from the football team and go baseball or track. But they did things along the way, and they were athletic. And so they knew how to compete in different ways. They knew how to fight through some things when you're tired, of how to press through that. And I think that tradition, right, that it was established a long time ago, has still carried on. Even with the split, right, it's still carried on with the kids in our community.
Yeah, we've been fortunate to see a lot of great sports here in Sun Prairie. It's just been very fortunate. Well, I'm going to end here with our fun question segment, and then this will end it here. Favorite song and or band to listen to? Scott, this is a tough one.
I don't know that I have one favorite one. I got a mix of, I go from listening to Metallica to listening to country music to sometimes it's nice just to throw on some quiet music, right? But I don't want to say classical because I don't know that I go that far, but I kind of have that gamut. I don't necessarily care for rap music and some of that hip hop, but there are some songs that are a little bit catchy. You just have to be careful on lyrics a few times. But I don't know that I have a favorite song, but I kind of whatever the mood is, right? If we're up north and visiting my wife's sister, we got a whole mix of cabin jams, right? You put in, and then it has a whole mix of, if you're out on the boat, right, that might be different music than when you're sitting around a fire. And so, I don't know. I think there's a number of groups. Metallica was always my go-to one when I was playing, just because of the intensity of the music and just kind of getting mentally ready to go. So if I had to pick one, if you forced me to say, that's probably what I'd say.
That's a good one. For me, probably, I like Fleetwood Mac, John Mellencamp, kind of that older style music. But then I kind of like some of the modern music too, like Lauren Daigle is an artist that I really like.
I do like her. Very unique voice.
Yeah.
Very unique. But yeah, she kind of can cross over a lot of different genres with stuff. Certainly very talented young lady.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Absolutely. So just some names that of artists that I like, but for music for sure. Favorite food to eat and why? That's a tough one for me, but.
Oh, I think I'd probably go with steak, having a nice steak, right? Some potatoes and maybe some broccoli or some other stuff along the way. But if I got to do it quick, I'm probably cooking a brat or some chicken or a burger on the grill over the summer. But having a nice open flame steak that's cooked there, that'd probably be my go-to.
This might be an unpopular opinion here, Scott, but sushi. I really like sushi.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Sushi's not bad. I enjoy that. I got to be in the right mood. But if you put those two on front of me, I'm going steak.
Go with steak.
Yeah.
But I like both a lot. But yeah, sushi maybe for me. I really like it. Especially on special occasion. It's just really good.
Yeah, it's expensive, so it's got to be a good treat.
Yeah, it's got to be a good treat. But for a good treat, I think I'm going sushi. Maybe favorite hobby to be involved in that's not sports related.
Oh, that's a good question. I've not thought about that one in a while.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah. I'm not good at it. I don't have enough tools to do it, but Mike Roth was a teacher at Chums where I first started teaching, but when I got back to Sun Prairie, he ran like the tech ed department, woodworking class, and I really enjoyed going down and having him teach me some things. So if I could have a hobby, I don't really have one that sticks out, but if I could have one, I'd probably say I'd like to learn how to do that much better, and just create some things, whether it be gifts or something for our house or whatever, that I'd like to learn how to do that. I have to be careful because I like my 10 fingers, so I need somebody guiding me through all that work. But when you start from just scrap wood and you create something out of it, I think it's pretty neat to be able to share that.
I think, Scott, for me, it's like acting, singing sort of stuff. I just like to do that sometimes for fun.
Yeah.
Just like pretend act about like a play or.
I would do that if I'm alone, but I'm not doing that in front of people.
I'd love to be an actor. It'd be so fun.
Yeah.
Best subject in school, and why do you think it was your best subject?
I'd probably go with math. That's what I teach now over at Patrick Marsh. I just enjoy that. My dad was, growing up, he was a 5th grade teacher at Northside Elementary, and was our math teacher. I have 2 other brothers, and he was our math teacher. And I've always just liked it, kind of figuring out the difficulty of things, finding the solution to stuff, right, sticking with it, which I think helped athletically, like learning that stick to it part of it, and not giving up so easy. I will say when I got up to calculus, I tap out of calculus. I did not like calculus. I won't take calculus again, but it's fun for me to help try and teach some of our kids over at the middle school and give them some maybe different ideas of thinking about things and ultimately making a connection, not so much about the math, but how can you make a connection in your brain? So if something is difficult down the road, how can you use some of the strategies that we talk about going? But for me, I would say math.
For me, history, Scott.
All right.
History, U.S. history. I don't know. I think I was just
my
good
dad
at
would get
remembering
along with.
dates and.
Yeah, my dad loves history, so you guys would get along well.
All right, your dad and I have been a good pals there with
Yeah.
the subject at
Yeah.
school. Favorite pregame football food to eat and why? That's a tough one.
Yeah, two things pop into my head. My mom always made us like broccoli quiche in high school growing up. I think we had it one time. My brother and I played. I was a sophomore. He was a senior, and she made that quick for us after school, and we came home and ate it, and we won. And so we said, "You're making that again until we lose," right? And
Right.
so she did that for 3 or 4 years with us. In college, it was basically breakfast for us. So there's usually a little bit of prime rib, eggs. I try not to eat a whole lot of stuff that was going to upset your stomach when you're running around and hitting. But I would guess the eggs for me, having a little bit of potatoes, so I know could burn that during the game. But being really careful with what we did, and obviously at that level we're eating fruit and we're doing all that
Right.
stuff. But for me, eggs was kind of the go-to before pregame at the college level.
I feel like what would be good would be like something with like pasta, like noodles.
Yeah, we ate that at dinner.
You ate that at dinner,
ate it
okay.
at dinner. Now, some of the offensive linemen might have had that for breakfast. I knew that wouldn't sit well with me during a game.
Spaghetti.
So,
I'd like to have spaghetti.
yeah. If that was dinner time, yeah, I would do that for sure.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to Marc Madness Sports on this Thursday. I'm Marc Carstens, the host of Marc Madness Sports, joined today by Sun Prairie native Scott Nelson, also former UW Badgers football player, former PA announcer, former Cardinal athletic director. The list goes on for what Scott's all done here with sports. But thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. Be sure to grab some broccoli quiche next time you right before you go to a Bank of Sun Prairie Ashley Stadium football game in Sun Prairie. Everybody have a great rest of your Thursday. Thank you for tuning in to Marc Madness Sports. Thanks again to Scott Nelson. Everybody have a great rest of your Thursday, and goodbye now.